Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastup Jr.
Welcome back to the Ask Ralph show as we dive back into our credit series. We've covered quite a bit so far, and today we're going to talk about your credit report. And this is something that, if this is the first time you're reading your credit report, it could be a little overwhelming. So it's something you definitely want to take some time and look into. But the key to that is knowing what types of things appear on your credit report. It'll make it much easier to read and understand. So the first thing is get a copy of your credit report. Now you can order a copy of your credit report from any of the 3 credit bureaus that we talked about in the previous shows. Or you can go online and get a copy of your credit report for free. The website is annualcreditreport.com. There are other websites and apps that will offer you copies of your credit report as well. One of the things you want to take into consideration is there really are 3 credit bureaus. So don't just assume that if you're looking at the credit report from TransUnion, that might have all the information that the other credit report agencies have. So you've got TransUnion, and you've got Equifax, and you've got Experian. So you want to make sure that you get copies of all 3, but all of them are going to be very similar in that they're going to have these particular areas of interest. The first one is your name and variations of your name. So what you'll find here, and this sometimes surprises people, they think there's some sort of identity theft. Your credit report could contain different versions of maybe your name, even some misspellings depending upon how it was put into a credit application. So if you have somebody that you gave a credit application to, maybe it was a credit card or something like that, and they misspelled your name, it could be in there wrong. Now, of course, if you were married before, or if you're now married, you may see your maiden name there. But it's compiled using information from the creditors and lenders you do business with. So the name you put on your application, like the one that shows on the credit card statements, is the same one that should appear on your credit report. So you want to be consistent. Now, one of the areas I tell you really want to focus in on is if you're a junior, senior, or third or fourth. I'm actually a junior, and one of the things that I've seen in past is, credit reports sometimes will not show the junior, will not show the senior. And so you want to be careful that that's being reported. It's very important. And if they've misspelled your name, you definitely want to make sure you contact the lender and make sure that they get it corrected. Now, the next area you're going to find is your current and previous addresses. If you've had mail at more than one address, there's a great possibility those addresses will appear on your credit report. Now, if there's an address where you never lived appearing in a credit report, it's definitely something you want to dispute. And I guess we should talk about disputes right now. The idea with a credit report is if you find something that's inaccurate on your credit report, you have the ability to dispute that. And each of the credit bureaus have a way of setting up a dispute. So you want to make sure you follow up with that, because it could be that this particular area is something is either hurting your credit score, which we're going to talk about in the next section, or it could be a sign identity theft. So make sure you keep an eye on those address lines and make sure that they are accurate. Now, they may very well be at places you've lived before, or if you've used any other addresses. Now, the next section is going to be your employer. The name of your employer may appear on your credit report if you provided it to any of your creditors, lenders, or businesses that report to the credit bureaus. Now, this employer information doesn't influence your credit score, but may help lenders and credit card issues verify the information on your loan or credit card application. So a lot of times if you do a loan application online, one of the ways they verify that you're who you say you are is they're going to compare information that they show on the credit report and make sure that you're able to answer this question. For example, I don't know if anybody's ever seen this, but let's say you go online to apply for a card and they'll say, well, we want to verify your identity. And they'll ask you questions such as, what is the amount of the car loan that you have with Chrysler Finance? Or when did you take out, the mortgage loan with Wells Fargo? So that's part of the reason that this information is on there. Or they might ask you a question like, which one is one of your former employers? Now, the next area you're going to see is any revolving accounts. So these are accounts that you can borrow from over and over. These would be the typical, credit cards or things like line of credits, those type of things. Then you're going to see your installment loans. Installment loans are one-time loans that require monthly payments each month for a set period when the loan is paid off. So this would be your typical mortgage loans, car loans, and student loans. Unsecured personal loans will also appear here if they're what we would call installments loans. Then you're also going to see open and closed accounts will both appear on your credit report. Now, the reason they're doing that is a lender wants to see, how well you've honored your credit in the past. With the exception of negative and closed accounts, these remain on there if they're older than 7 years. Those accounts that have passed the credit reporting time limit, that's after the 7 years. Accounts that were closed in good standing remain on your credit bureau about 10 years after the account has been closed or whatever period the credit bureau has specified. So they can sort of set up their own rules. But again, this comes back to a roadmap for a lender or a bank or someone to use to make some decisions. Included with that, you'll also see your account payment history. And what you'll see here is next to each trade line, you'll see a negative payment history that is usually about 24 months. And they'll have different numbers. For example, one of the credit bureaus might use an X if it's paid on time, and they may use a 1 if it was 30 days late, or a 2 if it was 60 days late. But these are all things that you really need to make sure you take a look at. They're also going to show your recent credit and loan applications. And we talked about that before and how that affects your credit score based on these inquiries. Now, these inquiries will remain on your credit report for 24 months. And again, a lender wants to use that because they want to take a look and see, are you out fishing for credit? As we talked about in one of our credit sessions before. If you're out there applying for every credit card on the planet and I'm the next person that pulls your credit report, I'm getting concerned. Are you in the midst of having some sort of financial crisis and you need to really take a look at yourself and see, do I want to make another loan to this person? The last remaining two things you're going to find on there are collection accounts and public records. Now, unpaid debts that have been sent to a collection agency usually appear on your credit report. So, for example, when I was working in the industry, you would see a lot of those for things like medical collections. So, if a doctor was unable to collect their fee from you, they may turn that over to a collection agency. Even something small as a $4 your library card fine could end up being on your credit report if the library sends that to collections. And that will affect your credit score. So it's something you want to take a look at. This is why it's important to take care of all your bills. Like I mentioned before, sometimes people will do this if they have a return check that they didn't make good at the bank. Or, a lot of times we see this with cell phone providers. Maybe you leave a cell phone provider, but the other cell phone provider charges off the account or shows it as a collection. Now, the final area is public records. These are the things that would include things like bankruptcy, if you've declared bankruptcy, repossessions, and foreclosures. These are all proceedings that have gone through the court system. They will stay on your credit report for up to 7 years for repossession and foreclosure and 10 years for bankruptcy. So that's why you want to really pay attention to what's going on your credit report. And if there's something that's not supposed to be on there, you want to make sure you do a dispute. Now, we're going to, in our next session, talk about the credit score. So this credit report has all these different components. And in our next session, we're going to talk about how would they derive a credit score. Now, I would remind you, all of these credit sections are on our podcast. So if you want to go back and listen to any of them or listen to them in total, you can go to where you get your podcast and look for the Ask Ralph logo.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Saggio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.